know that 30% of liver cancer cases in Africa is caused by aflatoxin contamination? 40% of food commodities in the local African markets exceed the safe limits of aflatoxin. Africa loses annually up to $670 million, an equivalent of over 20 billion naira in the export trade due to aflatoxin contamination. It's on that note I welcome you to today's edition of Farmer's Diary, reaching you from Dar es Salaam, the capital of the Republic of Tanzania, from where some scientists and key sectoral stakeholders in Africa are worried over the high level of destruction of maize by aflatoxins contamination.
The problem of aflatoxins in Africa has been there for many years. So we know the problem is there, okay? There is evidence that exposure to these toxins causes a number of problems which are linked to our health, okay? I think, to me, the starting point, or the point where we need to focus more with working together as collaboratively, the different disciplines that are linked to this, is putting a lot of emphasis on extension, raising awareness to the different actors that are involved. You need to equip the farmers with the right knowledge on how to grow their maize to reduce contamination while on the farm. What they need to do once they've harvested the maize to reduce the risk of contamination, maybe through better storage, etc. We need to educate them about the health risks that are associated with feeding animals, the bad maize that they think are not safe for their own consumption. We need to think of other actors, for example, the traders, when they go from village to village looking for maize to buy. What kind of maize should they buy, okay? Should they buy maize that it ends up being contaminated? How do they dispose that maize? If they use the back doors to maybe process the maize and sell it to unsuspecting people, that's a risk to our health, okay? So probably they do these things and they don't know, but we need to come in and raise the awareness.
Aflatoxins is one of those major problems actually that has come on, especially here in East Africa, because people consume a lot of maize. You know, in this part of the world, maize is food. Without maize, there is no food, and so people consume quite a lot of it. So some of these studies that we have done is to try and provide evidence for the levels of contamination of maize with aflatoxin. And we have found out that the prevalence of aflatoxin contamination actually is more than 90%. So if we go out there, we collect samples from the farmers, about 90% of those will be contaminated with aflatoxin. And we've had levels as high as 1,000 ppb in some of the maize that is contaminated. The same thing is happening with groundnuts, where we get more than 80% of our groundnuts being contaminated, and also the levels are really high. We get on average more than 300 ppb, and they can go up to more than 1,000 ppb. So what I mean by ppb is these are the levels that has been established to measure how safe the food that is contaminated is from aflatoxin. For human consumption in East Africa, the levels of total aflatoxin needs to be 10 ppb or less. Now, if we are getting averages of 200 ppb as high as 1,000, we run into problems. And this is what has happened in Tanzania, for example, in 2016. More than 65 people were hospitalized after consuming maize that was contaminated with the aflatoxin, and unfortunately 18 of those lost their lives. So this is just one of the causes of from aflatoxin. When you consume high quantities of aflatoxin, you have what we call acute aflatoxosis. So you get poisoning, immediate poisoning, and then your liver just shuts down, and then you get distended stomach, and usually people die. But then there's another major problem on the other side, which is now what we call acute aflatoxosis, after toxin poison exposure. where people are eating food that has low levels of aflatoxin over an extended period of time. And this is what is associated with the stunting, immune suppression, especially for the children, liver cancers. You know, you heard that about 30% of liver cancers in Africa are attributed to aflatoxin consumption. So those are really like the major problem, because this is something that is really like killing you inside, but you don't know about it. So that's why aflatoxins are really a major problem.
The message is that the country really has to focus on, cleaning up the value chain of maize so that it is aflatoxin free, so that the population can be able to access adequate food, the country is able to trade, and then the disease burden associated with aflatoxins contamination is reduced at the health level.
Besides the impact on human and animal health, is actually a major problem on trade as well. One of the reasons why there has been a major barrier in trading in our crops and in processed product that has maize in it is because of aflatoxin. If you want to export your product, either a processed product from maize or groundnut to European Union, there's a standard that is required by them, which is a 4 parts per billion, which in most cases we have not been meeting. Some of the key issues that has come out is a policy advocacy to ensure that we work with our policymakers, in diverse countries and in Nigeria specifically, to have a better understanding of the implication or impact of aflatoxin on our crops and how that affects our economy as a whole. It's very important that is a health issue, but it's also a major importance that is also an economical issue as well. Besides the policy advocacy, the awareness aspect as well is one thing that we have gained from here to ensure that the issue of aflatoxin is made known, in our country. And when we are talking about awareness, it's not just awareness at high level, to segment it and across the whole value chain of maize, where we're talking about the smallholder farmers, we're talking about women, we're talking about diverse genders, we're talking about processors, we're talking about industry that use maize, we're talking about policymakers, and we're talking about even the market women. So that awareness aspect is much more. It's also to explain that despite the fact that this is a problem, there are also solutions, that we have has been proven to work. There are diverse approaches that could be used, to reduce the aflatoxin problem.
You go to the rural area to go and buy maize. How is the guy going to know that what the maize is buying is toxic? He cannot know. And for him to go and test, as we have done, it costs a lot of money. I went to three labs. One gave a wrong result, but I still persisted. So that's the problem we have. So, like I said, I remember, all right, apart from what we do, raising chickens, we also distributors for one of the major feed mill producers in the country. Now, when they started, we spent 150,000 naira testing their feed to determine the level of aflatoxin in their feed. But please, we're getting very clear. You see, your testing is not like a car in which you take a car today, you test it and it is fine. Now, when it comes to feed, because you are talking a manufactured thing, and maize, they use maize of different batches. You test today, it might be okay. The next one you test next month might not be okay. So you are talking of a constant vigilance on what you have, and that's a challenge. So you can see it's expensive to test. As we said at this meeting, you need to create centers or regional groups or community development associations or cooperatives that will assist them in testing. There are very few lab centers in the country, and even at that, they are very expensive. So for most farmers, are you a farmer who's buying one bag? What is it going to cost him? Now, when we are testing a trailer. A trailer means 30 tons. That's 30,000 kg of maize. We're going to test. Now, the dairy farmer is going to buy, who is going to buy 1 bag or 10 bags or whatever it is? Or even for the feed, is just testing a few. So in essence, the government has to figure a way. I don't like saying government because Nigeria government is I would say it's a joke. It just doesn't work. We must get the private sector involved in what is happening. That is the truth, really.
Several deaths have been recorded in some countries of Africa, specifically Kenya and Tanzania, due to outbreaks of disease associated with consumption of aflatoxin contaminated maize. The forum is therefore bringing together experts including farm organizations, researchers, agriculturalists, traders, nutritionists, policymakers, and health experts to discuss and deliberate on implementable solutions to the growing aflatoxin menace.
And to think that we all enjoy the various special delicacies prepared from this grain called maize, where we have tuwo in the north, ogi from the south, akamu for the east, and eko from the west. I tell you, it's a thing of great concern to hear that maize consumption can lead one to getting terminal diseases such as cancer. And so, we have considered it important to share outcomes of this meeting of experts working round the clock to ensure our grains are safe again, especially to remove the aflatoxin contamination.
We don't have a single option, a silver bullet to deal with aflatoxin contamination. So countries and regions have to look at integrated solutions, including technology options, pre-harvest and post-harvest technologies, awareness raising at the producers, processors, and the general public consumers level, and also working with policymakers and regulatory agencies to create incentive for aflatoxin control interventions. So if we do all of that, the market will also start to distinguish, African markets will start to distinguish between aflatoxin contaminated and safe food. Otherwise, we don't have a single silver bullet that can solve the aflatoxin problem overnight. It requires coordinated efforts and collaboration. But we have, in the form of holistic integrated solutions, we can deal with the problem. It's not a problem that we cannot solve.
We are going to employ researchers in various ways, from postdocs, from short courses, from masters and PhD, to research and come with technologies which can address and mitigate this problem. So it's good that we're here and we're hearing from the owners of the problem. And from here, we're going to look into how to train our critical mass to be able to address this problem which is in the continent.
But we are here in Tanzania to look at the maize value chain as a whole in terms of ensuring that we are having quality maize that is safe for our population, that is safe for business. And I think one of the key also underlying messages as well was the fact that there is no single bullet in terms of dealing with this challenge of aflatoxin. We have to use the value chain. We have to look at all the actors in the value chain, those who provide inputs. What is it that they can do to help during the production of maize that there is reduced contamination? At the production level, what is it that can be done? When we are harvesting, when we are transporting, what is it that the traders should do? When our commodity is in storage, what are the actions that we should follow to ensure that we have a quality product? I think we are here in Dar es Salaam to strengthen teamwork, to strengthen partnership, to protect our food security, to ensure there's no contamination, to protect our trade, to ensure we are exporting quality products, and to protect our health, to ensure there is no overall contamination in what we are consuming.
Moving forward, I think it's important to go back to the basics. We know what the basics, what the best practices are in mitigating this problem. First, there has to be a will at a country level, at a regulatory level. The authorities has to treat this much more seriously and put in the resources that's required to support the farmers to be able to produce
a maize that, first of all, is that is free of the infestation, but also the infrastructure that's required to enable the farm, the products, the produce of the farm produces, to reach the point of use in a safe manner as well. Of course, awareness is very important. We've heard throughout this meeting so far, very important. But also putting in place other basic other technologies that are known to result in massive improvement. This is such as grain cleaning and sorting technologies. In addition to that, testing is vital. In order for us to know where we are, we need to be able to test. We need to be able to test reliably as well. And so I think it's a huge challenge, but it's an old problem for which there's been solutions all around the world.
Of course, Nigeria was well represented at this table to address the challenges of aflatoxin. Coming back home, the consensus is that all hands must be on deck to resolve this at home level.
The workshop for the validation of the report of the country-led situation analysis and action plan for Nigeria marks a great stride into what we're going to do with PACA and aflatoxin in Nigeria. Because as we validate this report, we will now pick up with all the action and whatever we want to do with PACA here. Aflatoxin is a very great problem for the country. Our food is infested all over. If you move from here to any part of Nigeria, you'll find out that we are sitting in aflatoxin. This is one big factor that we saw in 2012. And we believe on the have the political will to do this, we have a lot of problem. I remember when I was growing up in those days, if you go to, in those days of health inspectors will be visiting your house to see whether your water is properly kept and the environment and things like that. But maybe because of political reasons, you have situations like that. So you have that in here. When you want to export commodities, never make sure that you do the right thing if you don't bypass the market. When you want to import, you do the right thing. But the bulk of the food that is consumed by our people here is unregulated. There are no regulations governing aflatoxins, and there is no agricultural extension messaging about GAP for farmers, just as we have for fertilizers. If you agree with me, that has been, the agricultural extension messaging changed the distribution and the corruption in fertilizer business in the country. Therefore, like I said, the current study targeted really along the value chains of maize, groundnut, and sesame.
Nigeria has therefore been selected based on this criteria. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, during the roundtable discussions with the African Union Commission, the government of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, PACA and ECOWAS, we agreed to implement the following activities in an attempt to mitigate the aflatoxin problem in Nigeria. The first initiative is establishing the African Aflatoxin Information Management Systems, which we call in short Africa AIMS. The second one is conducting country-led aflatoxin situation analysis and action planning. And the third one is mainstreaming aflatoxin control through the PACA initiative in CADEP National Agricultural Food Security Plans. I am pleased to report that in Nigeria, these three activities have been well underway since 2016. We are gathered here to validate a report of the assessment commissioned by PACA to assess the current situation in the country, to come up with a comprehensive, evidence-based national plans for this country.
Nigeria is considered the giant of Africa and so is expected to take lead in all times. But that is not to say that we cannot draw lessons from our other fellows to ensure we end this high level of our farmers' losses. Let's learn from the Tanzanian experience.
We had an outbreak last year. Of course, some laboratory tests went on because there were different opinions that it is or it's not. And then finally it was concluded that it is indeed aflatoxin. And therefore, when an opportunity came that we can write something to ask for support from the African Commission, we did that with the help of experts. And then we are given this $20 million to combat aflatoxin in the maize, and now I'm being told maize and groundnut value chains. That is excellent. And what I've been telling my people, that look, this money should be utilized properly, because awareness is still very low. Most of our farmers do not know even what is aflatoxin. Completely. You talk to them this thing, it is like you're telling them something from a different universe. Now, this money should be used to create the necessary awareness among our farmers. Farmers should know that if they see something like this, or if they behave like this after harvesting, they will end up with losing their crop because of the aflatoxin occurrence. Now, that money will be used that way. Of course, I gave government a guarantee that we are going to support the initiative. We are going to see that at least there is value for money, that money is not wasted in meetings and meetings and meetings. This is what I've been cautioning guys, that money should be spent to create that awareness, to come up with the programs to safeguard farmers from losing their crops because of the toxin. From what we faced last year, it is good that every other countries with a little understanding on this issue should also take it on board, make it one of their priorities. You see what? Post-harvest losses accounts to a big percentage in many African countries. We are at a level from between 30 to 35%. Some other countries, I'm told, is even higher, 50 to 60%. Imagine you harvest and 60% of what you have wasted the energy and money just get lost like that. So I advise my fellow ministers in different countries in Africa to also take this issue as a serious issue, to minimize post-harvest losses, and of course on the health aspect, that people should not be losing lives because we cannot mitigate the effects of aflatoxin.
Food for thought there by the Tanzanian Minister of Agriculture. We have held a lot of talk shops at the boardroom level, capacity building workshops and policy dialogues. Time to act is now. Let's move into the field to pass these messages, research findings to the farmers who produce the food we eat. And from what we have gathered from the experts about aflatoxin's contamination of our staple foods such as maize, groundnut, soybean, and others, if we do not put in more efforts to end this quickly by adopting best technological practices to mitigate aflatoxin contamination, then food safety and security will be threatened.
What are governments doing? We need to get our governments to begin to act on it beyond having a continental program. We need to get governments to deliberately develop policies, deliberately allocate budgets to finance some of these projects, and deliberately oversee, the implementation to ensure that it is on course, so that we control this issue of aflatoxin.
I have learned that in other countries and organizations, some of the scientists have developed aflatoxin tolerant varieties. Yeah, well, we don't have those. If we could have them and demonstrate them to our members in NASFAM, it's very important.
Because it's only in Nigeria, I will tell you, that you are the same farmer, you fund yourself, you do everything yourself. The government doesn't have any single contribution to you. I think I've been really thoroughly educated about aflatoxin. And presently now, I'm a victim of that toxin right now in my farm, as I've lost over 2,000 birds. They don't coordinate farmers. The farmers are scattered. And the only people that can reach farmers, the government has the resources to reach farmers. And they're not educating them. How can you be speaking grammar since morning now and everything, and the farmers are in the bush? Now I can relate to my farmer. And being a victim, if I had not been here, I wouldn't have known the consequence of this. Let's even see, we cannot forget about the human angle to it health-wise. But even the one that has caused me, you can see the blister. I was down, not with malaria, I was just down psychologically, health-wise and everything, because when you see your chicken dying, it's as if your children are dying.
Well, as they say, a word is enough for the wise. Our duty here on Farmers Diary is to always bring you this vital information about how we can increase food production, create jobs, as well as ensure food security through agriculture. But only you can make it happen. If you just joined in, the discussion continues on our online platforms as we have come to the end of today's edition. We brought you a rundown of events on the gathering of the scientists about how we can prevent aflatoxin's contamination of our staple foods. Remember, you can watch the entire package again if you log on to our website, www.ztonline.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, ZTTV, for updates. For sponsorship details and advert placements, please call 080-34-540469 or send us WhatsApp messages to 0701-3453-224. I'm your anchor, Iwe Sekunde. Let's meet again, same time next week. Bye for now.